the working class rising up. This is the ruling class punching down.
My day, bigger your day.
First rule of gladiator school, bro. Don't punch down.
Charging into a goblin's Hail, Trump!
The threat from outside forces is far less sinister, dangerous, and grave than the threat from within.
Control your own body.
We will root out the communists, Marxists, fascists, and the radical left thugs that live like vermin within the confines of our country.
We can fight the entire grinding system. Nobody can. But together, everybody can.
I did nothing wrong.
Hello and welcome to Did Nothing Wrong Live, the show that cuts through the noise and helps you make sense of the chaotic information space around us. I'm Griff Somke, and with me is Karl Folk. In today's episode, we talk about the white smoke coming out of MAGA's ears. We also talk about the arrest of the Mayor of Newark, New Jersey for touring an ICE facility in his town. And finally, we have to shout out the brave citizens of Worcester, Massachusetts for coming out in their numbers to defend a community member from another masked ICE raid. Thanks again for your support. Keep listening to learn more, and remember to smash those like and subscribe buttons. Karl, we got a new pope.
We do, in fact.
And, you know, as a lapsed Catholic, I'm probably not the most qualified person to talk about this, but it was kind of a surprise, and I think it was a surprise not only to me, but to a lot of people, that they actually picked an American. That was not something anybody I really had on their bingo card as a serious possibility, except Steve Bannon, who mentioned that on an episode not too long ago of his show, that he thought this guy was a dark horse favorite, and he said it was going to be really, really bad if they picked him.
And I think, unfortunately, he's one of the most progressive is Cardinal Prevost. I don't think he's getting enough play. He is certainly on the short list as being, and I think it's pretty shocking given how the contempt they hold the American church. The American church gives so much money, they're afraid it has too much power. So they've never really wanted to have an American pope. But my understanding is Prevost is one of the ones closest to Francis ideologically. He's also had tremendous experience in Latin America. And so he's one of the ones on the short list.
So anything that's pissing Steve Bannon off, I'm pretty down with at this point.
Yeah, no, I mean, out of left field is a real one for this one. And I think, you know, we're going to come to find out more, but this guy seems very interesting. And I know from reading both what he said in his first, homily and what he said previously, this guy seems kind of cut out of the same cloth as Francis. And he also chose a name that historically
represents social justice.
Yes.
The last Pope Leo was definitely one of the founders of the social justice movement in the church, and they've been using his teachings ever since. So
yeah, no, exactly. Well, and that's the thing, you know, Leo the 13th, I believe.
Yes, Leo the 13th.
Yeah, you know, that was the end of the 18th century.
Mm-hmm.
And he's credited with dragging the church into the end of the 18th century, right as the 19th and the 20th showed up.
That's
so it's good for him. But no, that's exactly right. And he chose a name that's synonymous with both social justice, but also labor rights and truly like the stuff that we would now kind of consider to be the class struggle.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's going to be very interesting to see where he goes. And his first homily and what he said previously is right in line with someone who would choose, you know, a name like that. And the far right and the trad caths are appropriately in their bag of being absolutely insane about it. And so
they're mad. They're so mad. It's great.
It's really a twofer that the new pope both knows about Malort.
Yeah.
And has pissed off some of the worst people on the planet.
The fascinating part about this is that the man has a Twitter account. And he's been posting on Twitter for quite some time. In fact, he was retweeting Cardinal Dolan of New York's criticisms of Trump back in 2015.
Yeah.
So welcome to the resistance, Pope Leo the 14th, I guess.
Yeah, I guess.
And it's kind of fascinating that this guy who has his own Twitter, and he definitely seems to tweet for himself if you look at his timeline. I mean,
Oh
Francis
yeah.
had a Twitter account, but nah, he wasn't using it. He
No.
had staff. This guy doesn't have staff posting his own thing. It's like,
Yep.
and I was thinking about this yesterday. I was finding myself thinking, I don't think I have a problem with that. The idea that this guy, because this is where the arguments take place. This is where the conflicts take place
Yeah.
in information space. So this guy's got the skills to run a Twitter account and to criticize people like JD Vance, and now he's got the biggest platform you could ask for.
Literally the leader of 1 billion plus people.
Look what it did for Trump, getting
Yeah.
on Twitter and putting his ideas out to the American people. This could be the best thing that's ever happened to the Catholic Church.
Well, this is going to be really interesting, right? And
Right.
and I think, in bringing up what we did about Leo, the history of the name, it wouldn't actually shock me if we saw someone who was much more maybe attuned to it. I wouldn't say
Right.
using it regularly, but attuned to it, and also really truly someone who hates the Catholic Church in the same way that a lot of us do,
Nazi
right?
power,
Like,
how they
I
were
saw
used
someone the other
together
day
in a lot of
talking
cases.
about,
Right.
and this might be the, I was thinking about this in relation to that and what, kind of what we're looking at. And this guy is such a different canon, like just in my head looking through, like, the canon for this person, just from what we've seen publicly.
Yeah.
He's an incredibly online pope compared to any of the others. He's not incredibly online, but comparatively he is. And I think that also speaks then to someone who may be able to understand the issues that face not just,
Yeah.
all of us socially, but like the church in a different way, which is really interesting. And I'm not even a lapsed Catholic. I'm a lapsed Episcopalian. So for me, this is all like 2 steps out and a
Right,
whole bunch
right.
of shame removed from it. So like for me, both as a lapsed Episcopalian and as a sociologist, it's really interesting to watch because now the culture is going to change in the future because of this. So this is really an interesting way to watch institutional and organizational change in a fundamental way. And this is someone who isn't perfect by any means, especially in his older stances on
No.
certain social issues like LGBTQ folks.
Right. And take it for what it is on that stuff. I mean, we're talking about the leader of the Catholic Church. He's not going to be as progressive as you would like him to be
No,
on any of these subjects.
No,
It's
and
baked
we
in.
don't actually know his current views because the last thing anyone's found is from 2012 or 2014.
Yeah.
A lot can happen in 10 plus years.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't think this guy's going to be out there, being full on.
They may not be flying pride flags at the
Right.
Vatican next year,
Right.
but I think that we're also going to see sort of a sea change. And this is where it was very apparent that, Francis got so many of his guys into the cardinal ranks
Yeah.
that it was going to be somebody who shared a lot of his views because something like 80% of the people who were voting were appointed by Francis.
Yeah.
So there was really no way they were going to get another conservative. And I think that just dawned on MAGA and all of these Tradcath guys, because I think they were thinking, we're going to get another Benedict or maybe something better, and we're going to get back to that. And you're like, no, this guy's like 68, I think. And that's a
68 or 69,
68 or 69. That's a spring chicken in Pope years. That's really young. And he has a number of years to put his people into whatever positions he wants to put them in. And by the time they get done, there may not be a whole lot of conservatives left at the top level.
And that's just it, right? Like this is actual social change at the same scale as political change, but in the opposite direction. So this is going to be very interesting to see, especially knowing what we know in the era after World War II, that the church really worked in some ways to dismantle certain parts of certain authoritarian structures.
Right.
It's going to be very interesting to see because this is a total change. I think about Pope Pius IX and X a lot these days, where they were the 2 Nazi popes, right? And like the difference a pope makes in the grand scheme of what may be to come may decide the balance. And I think that's really interesting because no one's, these are all things that you could never see coming.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's fascinating looking at the like there's an article, MSNBC headline, Pope Leo the 14th speaks English. That's bad news for JD Vance.
Right.
And they're talking about in 2013, right after his election, Pope Francis issued a document that condemned the exploitation of the poor, called for attention to, quote, the structural causes of poverty. He wrote, quote, inequality is the root of social ills. And he specifically rejected trickle-down theories as expressing, quote, a crude and naive trust in the goodness of those wielding economic power and the sacralized workings of the prevailing economic system. And they kind of freaked out. The conservative American commentators sort of tried to downplay it a little bit. They were like, no, he's talking about South America where it's way more corrupt. And, you know, they say it was more modest in the original Spanish. He didn't really say any of that, but they kept finding it much harder to say that this guy was somehow some kind of conservative. And as the article says, perhaps the cardinals like the idea of an American pope who can condemn human rights abuses and call for restitution and repentance in words that will not need translating. You know, it's like, you can't say this guy from Chicago, and he's very from Chicago. You hear that the minute dude opens his mouth. Like, wow, you sound like you're from Chicago, my guy. This guy's not going to need to really pull any punches here. And based on the things he's already said, the criticisms he's already made of Trump, the criticisms he's already made of JD Vance's interpretations of scripture. And they're really not happy with this at all. I think at some point, I would say probably in the next 10 years, we're going to see a schism. We're going to see the traditional wing of the Catholic Church break off somehow.
Well, and you already see him calling for that, right? Like on Twitter right now, much of the far right is calling for some sort of fracture. Or you have the Nazis like Laura Loomer out there just woke Marxist Pope. Which, by the way, if anyone's looking for a sweet name for a band, like a punk band, Marxist Pope is high on the list.
That's the kind of thing somebody would have like non-ironically named their band back in the day because they figured it was one of those weird things that it never would have happened.
This is literally 1986 is calling for a punk band that would have killed.
They'd be signed to Touch and Go or some shit. I mean, just like that. And the thing that's interesting about that is like, I mean, you go past Laura Loomer, and the really crazy people like Owen Benjamin are out there saying the man's a Jew. That's the problem. He's a Jew, and it's kind of like,
this is the. I mean, this is something you and I have talked about, and I've talked about publicly before, but like their absurdity only works to shield them and protect them from their own bullshit. It only extends so far. And like the absurdity that they've used to shield themselves and to wield as a cudgel ahead of them has worked really well for a long time. And that is increasingly, we're starting to see it laid bare. Right? Whether it's with stuff like this or stuff with the economy or other facets of how Trump has really started to talk about his own plans. We're starting to see that it's an ever-shifting lie. And for those of us who've studied this or done this work for any amount of time, we've always known that there was no floor. It was always just something new to bubble up to keep people in line with what they were trying to keep you in line with. And that's, one of the arguments that gets had is that, their unreality state is this, this massive thing. Yeah, it is. It's also incredibly fucking brittle. If it wasn't, they wouldn't be freaking out like this. And it's, a couple nights ago, I was doing a group talk with a bunch of people, and someone asked me at the end how I keep somewhat optimistic right now. And it's partially because, at a certain level, the bullshit you have to expend to get what you need out of it far surpasses your ability to spend bullshit. And we're starting to see the ability for reality to not just like come through, but we're seeing sections where they can't maintain the lie at a sufficient level to keep people ensnared. And that's not to say their whole fever dream is breaking, but as reality starts to really press, on the bullshit and the unreality state that they've built over the last 20 years, but really, really used over the last 10 or 15, it's going to get easier and easier to break parts of it away and force them to actually cross from not just absurdity, but into farce and satire. Right. And screaming woke Marxist Pope is satire. You're no longer in absurdity anymore. You're just straight
you're
up
whatever comes after that.
You're a fucking meme.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the thing that I've been arguing for a long time, is like the left and liberals specifically need to understand that once they step into farce, into meme, they're done.
Yeah.
You just have to do the rest of the work. And if you do that, you end their ability to hold power in the information sphere in the same way.
Right.
And we're starting to see that, right? Like it's happening in other ways too, where Trump is being forced to step back from some of the hardest hitting things he's done. Like we can now see that in certain cases, like with Miss Oster, he's free. That breaks the bullshit spell. It also leads though to more from Trump, but it also breaks the veneer of unreality that they've spun, and in a really fundamental way. And this is gonna do the same thing. The AB starting to happen more.
Absolutely. And we're seeing that clampdown coming now. Like you said, there's only so many things that they can maintain at once. And I think we've hit the limit.
Well, and then you have to exert power, right? Like once the bullshit ends, the power starts. Yeah. And like, because the bullshit was the power for a long time, and now they have the ability to use power. We'll see if they know how to wield it. And what we've seen so far is not effectively. But
no,
the reality is, like, these guys are trial ballooning, suspending habeas corpus because of the pushback, not because of anything else, really.
They wouldn't have to say that if people weren't pushing back on it.
Correct. They don't have to do well, you need to fear us, we might do more narrative if they were at all winning. Yeah. And every time they have to take a step further because people aren't buying their bullshit, the further into the bubble we are encroaching, and the more likely it is that they fuck it up royally for themselves.
Absolutely.
Usually they have to step over first, but once they do, God help them.
And we're seeing it.
We're starting to. Yeah.
Yesterday, and we're recording this on Saturday, May 10th, 2025.
Yes.
Friday, the mayor of Newark, New Jersey, and three of New Jersey's congressional delegation went to go visit an ICE facility in Newark that the mayor has been very opposed to ever since this thing got built.
Well, and we should say too, the ICE facility was totally unlicensed, unsanctioned, and has been unsupervised, and has had no ability for people to even check at the city level.
Absolutely.
Things like fire safety violations.
Right. And they have any number of reasons they've cited why they won't let these people in. But the fact of the matter is that this isn't how things work here. No. You can't just do that. You have to declare eminent domain. You have to do any number of other things, and they haven't done any of that.
And as part of ICE's, I believe, mandate, they have an obligation to members of Congress to open up their doors.
They
no
have
matter
to.
What.
It's in the whole founding charter, and they didn't exactly do that. We're going to go to some footage. We're going to show you some footage of what happened, and we will leave you free to draw your own conclusions as to what this was.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot push me! You cannot push me! You cannot push me! You cannot push me! You cannot!
Press, it's press! Come on! Get back!
Do not touch Get your hands off of her.
Now, what if I told you that the mayor was arrested and charged with trying to storm the facility based on what you just saw and was moved to another location almost immediately? And the people of Newark did the thing that I suggested that they should do, like immediately afterwards. If you voted for the guy, even if you didn't vote for the guy and you would like to vote again at some point, you should be out here in the street demanding with, you know, a brick in your hand that they let this guy go or else. And that's about what happened. People showed up in their thousands with, you know, pitchforks basically saying, you let this guy go, or we're going to make what happened in Minnesota during the George Floyd uprising look like a child's first barbecue.
Well, and that's the thing, right? Like, we're starting to see it more and more. We saw it with that. We saw it with what happened in Westchester.
Western Mass was the same
Worcester,
kind of thing.
Yeah. Where the community came out and they tried to stop and arrest. Again, we're starting to get a full picture of what this actually looks like. And it's the thing that many people within the research side and the academic side, as well as the activist side, have been saying for years, which is the police are helping ICE and Department of Homeland Security carry out illegal kidnappings of American citizens.
Right.
And the police are being used to arrest those, trying to stop this illegal action. And that
yeah. Yeah. Right. You know, we've gotten to the point now where abolish ICE is like the middle of the road position.
So it is
the bare
not
minimum,
even middle of the road. That is an
table
entry
stakes.
level position. Yeah,
Right.
It's an entry level position.
You know, the radical position, well, we're not going to talk about that.
We
but
actually
it's
can't.
very
My
much
lawyer has told me not to.
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate that. But we are looking at a situation where these people are being used, like you said, to carry out the will of ICE and the will of DHS. We saw that in Worcester, Mass, where a woman was being detained and the citizens surrounded the DHS and ICE cars and wouldn't let them leave. They surrounded and swarmed the cars. And next thing you know, the local police are arresting those people. And they're asking, the people are asking at the time, like, where's the warrants? What are these people doing? And the cops' responses, very telling. They just kept saying, it's federal, ma'am. It's federal. Like that's supposed to be some magic wand that makes it all go away, including like, you know, the need for constitutional rights.
Yeah.
Anything. It's just, it's federal. It doesn't matter.
Right. And this is laying bare the whole damn lie. Right. And that's the thing. And I think for a lot of people, this is going to come as a shock and be rather an, oh my God moment. But the reality is, like, welcome to the party.
Yeah.
It's been going on a while. Glad to see you here.
Yep.
The cops are going to fucking kill people to maintain the status quo for fascists.
They absolutely are.
Sorry to be blunt, everyone. But Billy Joe down the street who's working for the Chicago PD will absolutely put a gun to someone's head if they try and protect someone from the Gestapo. Sorry. Just the reality of how it works now, because the police and the feds are working in tandem. And the federal level has basically told the subordinate state level, if you fuck with us, you're next.
Right.
And the right-wing infiltration of law enforcement, as has been talked about on your show,
real fucking bad.
It's bad in a way that people can't conceptualize, because it's so bad that they've shut down investigations. And when you couple those together with what we have going on, people have to get the picture. The cops are going to help do the worst of the worst here.
Yeah.
in a lot of cases. There are going to be outliers. There always are, but the actual institution of policing is going back to its roots as slave catching and protecting the wealthy, and that's it. Everything else is on us.
Right.
And
yeah. And some of those new people are going to be elected officials in various cities. Like if I'm the mayor of Worcester, Mass, I'm coming out and I'm saying any police officer on our force who assists with this goes on administrative leave tomorrow. You can come back to the station and you can turn in your gun and your badge, and you go on administrative leave until we fire you. Mm-hmm. Nope. Right. Right. No. Mm-hmm. And one thing we do know is that when you use the police for every function in a society, you get a police state. I mean, amazing. If all you can call is the police, if you've stripped mental health provisions, if you've stripped any sort of social services, if the only people who come when you call them are the cops, eventually the cops end up running the shit because there's no one else. And that's the whole problem right now, is that we decided we would rather use cops for things that they are not qualified to do, like mental health calls. It's insane. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 Right. Yeah. And I think honestly, we have to do our best to make sure that anybody who's coming into this now doesn't
yeah,
get gate kept out of it.
absolutely
Doesn't
not.
get told,
Yeah.
oh, well, you didn't do all of this other work. You don't get to talk. Well, you know what? Meet people where they are. Bring
Yeah.
people into this where they are and say, there's some pre-work here that you didn't get to, but we'll get to that. Right now,
Yeah.
we don't really have, I think, the time or the bandwidth to make sure everybody has read the right theory.
Well, in
Sorry.
academia, any kind of academic research, whether or not it's actually within the academic framework or not, breeds a level of myopia, right? Like you get very much into what you're looking at, so you don't see bigger picture stuff and vice versa. And a lot of people in research communities, especially ones that aren't like official, that are more like the anti-fascist research
Yeah.
networks or groups that have been working, at a counter extremism level, they have a very nuanced and niche view of a singular portion of a larger whole, let's say. Excuse
Yeah.
me. And that's put us in a position where that does keep some people out, and it keeps other people from feeling like they ever can like ask questions. And right now, what we need is more people asking questions with people who are willing to spend the time to walk people through the social history, maybe that requires you to get to that point, and other things, because that's what people are going to need. And the more you do that, the more you build that muscle in other people to walk others through the same event and logic train to get them to the point you are. And like the more we can do that, the more radical it gets, because that's also the basis for how we do better thinking
Right.
as individuals and as groups about problems.
And I mean, you want to see how this is successful, go down on any Saturday to your local Tesla dealership and see what's out front. It's people with privilege, and it's not going away.
No.
And
And that's just it.
basically almost a, somebody ought to do something. Okay, fine. It can be us type of situation. If you're an activist group of any sort, I would think you would want to harness that energy as much as possible and make sure that like the people who are willing to come out at times like this, because really it's not a cool time to be an activist. It's not a cool time to be out there, putting your name and your face on a website or in a protest, something that somebody's going to clear view and run through your social media and find out, hey, maybe you're, somebody who's got NIH grants, or you're somebody who we can really fuck with on some level.
Yep.
There's a level of like, this is personal and it's about to get scary that I don't think, was there before, but we are at that point now. So anybody who's willing to go out there and put themselves out in front of the public like this, in a situation like this, I think is somebody who's worth cultivating, bringing in. Maybe we don't always agree on everything, but they're not the enemy.
No, and generally, most people just need information.
Yeah.
They know something's wrong. They don't know what, and that's why it's so dangerous right now for conspiracy, right? Like we're seeing all of the things that we've seen in the past that lead to really bad conspiracy environments. This has all the hallmarks, and that's why it's so important for all of us to do this work this way and really put out voices who are talking about things that are real, that are based in an understanding that's not just singular. And also why being able to, there's going to be a lot of start and stopping here with what happens, because certain things are going to happen where the administration is going to be stopped.
Yeah.
We're seeing there are going to be avenues where they excel. We're seeing that. But because their bullshit is getting much harder to spin, and because the real world's starting to encroach, like I said earlier, force is going to become more on the table for them.
Right.
And that means we have to really think through approaching this in a way where those people who are out in front have an ability also to settle back a little bit and someone new comes forward. This is going to have a quality where there are always new people stepping forward.
Right.
And maybe not forever always new, but like you're going to have some shuffle.
You're going to need a rotation.
Yes.
The same people can't stay in for the entire thing.
No.
People get burned out. People get activist burnout. People get upset. People need to remind themselves why they're doing it. And sometimes that requires going off and doing something else for a while, going out of it and saying, I have to keep my sanity. I have to do something else completely. I can't count how many times in the course of all of this I've been like, you know what? Screw it. Nothing's going to change in the next 3 hours. I'm going to jiu-jitsu.
No, literally.
I'm just going to go train. Because
no, and it's that kind of,
I can't look at my phone. If I look at my phone, I'm going to get tapped. It's going to suck.
No, that's just it. That's just it. Literally. like I said it earlier today on social media, and I'm going to keep saying it going forward. Like, none of us, researcher, academic, professional with giant air quotes around it, whatever, can just sit and bathe in this all the time. And you have to have outlets. If you don't, this new world is going to be overwhelming, to say the least.
Absolutely, it is.
And, you know, everyone's still trying to accommodate what's going on.
Mhm.
And so we're going to see, again, fits and starts, but like, we're going to start to see the burnout, but we're also going to start to see new voices step in.
Right.
And I think we're all going to have to accept that, like, some of the voices that we've looked to in the past may not be there in the same capacity. Not that they're not doing great work. It may just be that they've shifted tone or looking at something much more nuanced and niche.
Right.
And that's going to mean for a lot of us being able to really sit down with information that feels bad.
Yeah. And process it for ourselves instead of kind of getting it processed for us.
Exactly.
Which is going to suck.
It's returning to an old way of doing things, but right now the only way through is through, and that means really probably slowing it down a little bit, because like none of us is going to keep up with the information state. None of us is going to keep up with the fire hose.
No, you can't.
And that's the point. And so we have to really be more strategic going forward, both as people who research this, but also as activists on the ground, because what we're seeing this last week, this uptick, this real hard push that it appears that is starting, is one of many to come.
Right.
And they're not going to win all.
No. And we had a victory this week. We got to talk about this. We had Ramissa Ozturk, who was a student at Tufts University, who wrote an op-ed during the Palestine protests this summer that the administration didn't like. So they detained her, and she ended up in this Louisiana detention center for 6 weeks. Well, they finally got told by a judge they weren't prepared to defy. Don't know how that happened. But
well, some judges, from what it looks like, might have the fear of God available.
Right. So they had to release her. She's out. And this woman, from the sounds of things, did literally nothing more than write an op-ed that the administration didn't like. And it wasn't even a terribly controversial op-ed. It was actually pretty anodyne. But she said some things that they didn't want to have that conversation. And they basically snatched her off the street. Masked agents who did not identify themselves. They grabbed her. They threw her in a car. And, you know, here it is 6 weeks later, but she's free. They aren't going to win all the time. They can't.
No.
And when these victories happen, we got to celebrate that. We got to say, hey, this is shout out to her, shout out to everybody who didn't shut up about it. Shout out to everybody who said, no, this is wrong. And we're going to keep yelling and screaming about it and filing appeals and, you know, pushing this up the line until she's free.
Yeah. No, truly. So, and this is the thing. Solidarity is in the moments where we have wins and we have losses.
Yeah.
And we're going to have a lot of what feel like small wins, but those small wins sometimes add up to a bigger gravity than all of the loss.
Yeah. And they're both easier to take when you have some solidarity with your community, with the people around you. Losing by yourself sucks. It's somewhat easier to tolerate when you have a group of people around you that understand where you're coming from and can say, look, we'll get them next time. We'll get them next time. Even if next time is way off. But
or scarier.
Celebrating a big win with the people who were also there and helped make it happen is an amazing feeling.
Yeah.
It really is.
There's nothing like it. And frankly, like, every American won the moment she walked out.
Yeah.
And we don't know where this goes. We don't know what DHS or ICE will continue to do. But for the moment, it's a win. And that's, unfortunately, sometimes all we get are momentary wins and reprieve.
And they're going to keep doing petty bullshit like what we saw at the Canadian border this weekend, where they set up a second checkpoint and started searching the trunk of every Canadian's car that came through. And, you know, they spent 2 days screwing up border traffic doing this. And they announced this morning what they found, which was 300 rounds of 9mm ammunition and some small amount of narcotics, which kind of reads like somebody spilled some drugs on the floor of their car and they found it.
Yeah.
But I found myself kind of thinking, first off, per my reading of the Canadian Explosives Act, and I am not a lawyer and I am definitely not a Canadian lawyer, they're allowed to bring in 5,000 rounds of ammunition at a time, as long as it's not something on the restricted list. So you're telling me that $50 worth of ammunition, which is about what we're talking about here, was the end result of 2 days of searching everyone's car?
Right.
That's what you found?
Right. And I mean,
Wow.
they say narcotics. I think weed, knowing how the feds talk about drugs, but like, yeah.
When they bust a lot of drugs, they'll tell you.
Oh yeah.
They'll tell you.
They find a bunch of fentanyl in the trunk. They're going to trade that shit out. Like,
we found 18 pounds of cocaine in a guy's suitcase. I mean, they'll tell you. They don't shut up about that.
No.
If all they said was a small amount of narcotics, it's like, that was a roach on the floor of somebody's fucking car.
Literally. Someone had a bag with residue in it from a dispensary. In
Spilled some bong water on the floor at one point.
That's the thing, though. Like, this all, it's the fear, uncertainty, and doubt game.
Mm-hmm.
They win either way, whether the courts stop it, whether they're forced to stop. They win for a moment. But in the long run, again, if you can't constitute solid change and solid power, hold on to it at every level, you failed as an autocrat. So, like, this is all also exposing, like,
where the fault lines are, really.
Power. They might be projecting power. The light's brighter than theirs right now.
Yeah. And we can keep that going. We can keep that going longer than they can keep that going.
If there's one thing Americans are good at, it is being the most insufferable people on the planet. Everyone listening outside of the United States, I can see you nodding.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
We're terrible fucking people.
Can be.
We're loud. We're obnoxious. We're fucking self-centered. We're terrible. But when that's used for good, we are the most irritating group of people on the planet. And frankly, like, the ungovernable classroom of a substitute teacher, has some real ring true for kind of the energy that we can bring.
Yep.
And that's just, you don't get much done whenever you're trying to put out 1,000, little tiny brush fires, as it were, at once.
War of the fleas shit.
Yeah, literally.
We are those fleas. We are the tiny little pinpricks.
Yeah.
All over the situation. We just, you can't get us all.
No. I mean, it's one of those things. Like, Americans are cockroaches, right? Like, we'll survive pretty much anything you throw at us.
Mm-hmm.
We'll be insufferable about a lot of it. And then we will go back to doing what we do otherwise, which is just being terrible.
Yes.
And, we can harness this for good. And I think, at the point we're at now, it's already there.
Yep.
It's self-sustaining. These guys push harder. It's going to get bigger. We're now in the actual, like, beginning stages of a vie for power, and the real power, the power of the population, not the government power, because that we know who.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I think it's, we're at such a transitionary point across the board for where we may land.
Yeah.
That all we can do right now is be as clear-eyed as we can, really understand that sometimes being the most up-to-minute informed is not the best informed.
No.
And really, just take time for your fucking self. Like, the one thing I can say without any doubt is, if you go outside and you spend 3 extra hours outside over the next week, you're gonna feel moderately better than you did if you spent 3 hours doom scroll.
Right. Even if you don't do anything, just go sit on a park bench somewhere nice.
Literally.
That's all you
go
gotta
soak
do.
up the sun.
Yeah.
You'll feel better.
Summer's coming. You might be spending some more time outside this summer.
76 degrees here in Minneapolis.
Yeah, man, that's great.
It's perfect.
Makes the winters worth living through, I mean, it's just something else.
Summer, winter for sure. Yeah, like a good solid 2/3 of it is great. Yeah.
Feel it in my skin, warming up my mind. Sometimes you gotta give in to win. I love the days when it shines. Whoa, let it shine. Sunshine, sunshine, it's fine. I feel it in my skin, warming up my mind. Sometimes you gotta give in to win. I love the days when it shines. Whoa, let it shine. Whoa, let it shine. Whoa, let it shine. Whoa, let it shine.